Hello and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining the Alexandria Library for tonight's webinar, Food Waste Reduction, Tips to Help Prevent Food Waste with Transportation and Environmental Services. My name is Megan Zimmerman, and I'm a librarian with the Alexandria Library, and I'm so glad that you joined us. This event is part of the City of Alexandria's Earth Day 2023. The theme this year is Invest in Our Planet, Practicing Sustainability. And I think tonight's presentation is a great example of practicing sustainability. We'll be recording this, and the webinar will be available at a later date, and we'll be sharing that with you all. And if you would like to ask questions, you'll be able to do that during this presentation as well. I'd like to introduce Helen Lee, who is the Environmental Program Manager for the Resource Recovery Division of the Department of Transportation and Environmental Services. Thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Alexandria Library, for hosting us today. Happy Earth Month, everyone. My name is Helen, as Megan introduced. I'm with the Resource Recovery Division in the city. And today, I have the utmost pleasure of introducing Howard Lee. Howard is in our office at the Resource Recovery Division with the city, and he's been a longtime advocate of food waste reduction, as he has served for years on the Regional Food Recovery Network, as well as launching some of our newest composting programs in the city. Today, Howard will be sharing with you some tips and tricks on how to prevent food waste. Of course, we always try to encourage and emphasize reduce and reuse before recycle or compost for food waste case. Today, I'll be moderating this discussion and ask Howard some questions as we go along. As Megan shared, we encourage folks to use the chat function to share your questions, your ideas, and your tips and tricks on how to reduce food waste at home. So without further ado, take it away, Howard.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Happy Earth Month, happy spring. This is certainly a time to start thinking about food and fresh food and the food that you actually waste. So I'm very excited to talk about this topic. As Helen mentioned, I've been sort of in this arena for a number of years here in the city and in the region. So I'm very pleased to share some of that information that I have, and hopefully we can sort of change some mindsets and some attitudes around food waste. Okay, with that, I'll get started. First slide. So what is wasted food and where does it come from? And I use the term wasted food as opposed to food waste because I'd like for us to start getting in the habit of thinking of our food as a resource and not as part of the waste stream. When you start thinking food resource, we start looking at it a little differently. It becomes now more of an item that we cherish and that we can recycle or compost. So wasted food is food that was not used for its intended purpose and is managed in a variety of different ways. So the types of wasted food we have are extra food or excess food. This is typically food you can donate. Spoiled food or food that went bad before consumption, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The food scraps and the plate waste. So there's some food waste that you ultimately can't consume or that can't be eaten, so that may get tossed in the trash. And then we have your overall food loss from the agricultural section, which is really big, and this is sort of like your unharvested crops. Just to put this in perspective for households and for us, we waste about 24% of our trash, that's food. So think about the waste that you put in your garbage once a week. About 24% of that is food waste, and 40% of the food that we waste in the US is food waste. Next slide. So how do we waste food and why do we toss it? Again, like I said, sometimes food is ultimately spoiled. Households didn't like what they ate or didn't, like what they cooked that night. We didn't enjoy that food. And our dynamic lifestyles, special occasions, work commitments, things like this keep us out of the kitchen and sort of out purchasing food or buying food. Again, households in the US, we average about $1,500 a year that we could probably save from our wasted food. we throw up 70% of that could be eaten. So we throw a lot of food away, waste a lot of money, and this is for a family of four. So a family of four could probably save about $1,500 a year if we sort of managed our wasted food a little bit better. Next slide, please. And here I talked about a lot of the spoiled food, where food gets sort of wasted, and a lot of confusion surrounding date labels. And really the date labels on a lot of your packaging and a lot of your food actually don't have any sort of government regulation. The only product in the US that has any sort of federal regulation for date labeling is baby formula. So any other label you see on sort of your meat packaging, on chips that you buy, on the milk that you buy, these sell-by, best-by dates are really manufacturer dates that are designed to tell you when it's the optimal freshness, when their product is going to be the best for you to consume it. So this can be a little bit confusing for a lot of people, seeing these date labels. One study showed that 84% of Americans report that they occasionally throw away the food because it's too close to this sell-by, best-by, or before-by date. Really, the only way we can check our food is spoiled is with these four things. Does it smell bad? Does it change color? Does it taste bad? Does it have a different texture when you look at it? Other than that, there really is no way to sort of gauge if that food is bad. Milk is sort of pasteurized, so you can drink milk past its best by date or best use date. There is some push for regulation to sort of streamline this and make it to where used by and best is used, if used by, are the only two labels that are used throughout. And I know, Helen, we had this discussion several times. I'm sure there's some things that we all kind of toss before that best by date. Is there something you maybe
Yeah, Howard, this is all super interesting to me. I know, personally in my family, we struggle with eggs, actually. We buy them and we never check the date label, but I always wonder, like, at what point is it still good? Do you have any tips for me on what I should check for?
Yeah, so eggs is one of those things too that, we should refrigerate the eggs. They can stay for a very long time. Sometimes we tuck them in the refrigerator and people may keep them for a month. But you can test eggs to see if they're good. You put eggs in water. If it sinks, that egg is ready to go. You can still eat it. If that egg sort of tilts up to its side up to the point, then you know it's getting close to being spoiled, and you should probably eat that as soon as possible. If your egg floats to the top of the water, then your egg is spoiled and you probably should throw that away. But there is also a website. So SaveTheFood.com does provide a directory where you can actually take a look at a lot of different food items. You share that for them, and it'll show you the best way to store eggs, to keep eggs. And I use this website a lot because, again, the date labels can be confusing. Sometimes you may buy items that have, some sort of green mush on it, or, a little brown spot on that apple that you may see. You think, is this still good to eat? There is another site called Eat or Toss, and this is a local blog. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that, but this also has a directory that will tell you about some different items. Say this brown spot on the lettuce, my lettuce is turning yellow. Can I still eat that? And I think those are some helpful websites that people can use to sort of save food and not toss it before these date labels here.
Got it. Thanks, Howard. That was really helpful. I shared the SaveTheFood.com's website with this cool resource. So let me go back to your slides.
So why is all of this important? I just sort of laid out a lot of statistics for you, talked about some money and, just your personal lifestyles, but why is food waste important? Well, in the US, About $166 billion is used to process food waste, and that's how much we throw away. Energy and land, we're using a lot of power to sort of manage our food waste. Enough energy that we use with food waste, we could probably power the country for a week. Water, we tend to not think about water as a resource when we think about food, but 25% of all fresh water is wasted when we waste our food. Fruits and vegetables contain about 70% of water. So if that goes into the trash, that water never gets to evaporate into the atmosphere that we kind of need that to do. And then a lot of hard work. There's a lot of hard work that goes into producing food, food distribution, cooking food, preparing food. And when we waste it, all that sort of hard work kind of goes to waste. So those four things: money, we're wasting a lot of energy, and land, water, and our hard work when we waste our food. Next slide. We can, again, conserve some resources when we start managing our food, become a little bit more climate conscious. When food is wasted, we waste, again, like the land, the water, the labor, all these natural resources. 85% of our greenhouse gas emissions are from landfill food, so we can certainly reduce that in landfills. When food waste goes to landfill, those nutrients never sort of return to the soil or the atmosphere. And I sort of mentioned your fruits and vegetables that contain mostly water, so that is just sort of stuck in a landfill that can't get back into the soil. And when we compost things, we can sort of make things a more nutritious soil that we can feed more people and sort of reduce a lot of the climate consequences that we have facing today. And we'll go to our next slide. So what can we do to reduce some food waste? And the EPA does recommend this food waste hierarchy. That starts out at the top with source reduction. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the next few slides. Feeding hungry people, feeding animals, and industrial uses, and then composting. These are some things that we can participate in. And landfill and incineration, which currently what Alexandria does with your food scraps, if they go in the trash, goes to incineration, which is the least preferred for food waste. Next slide, please. So I'll give you like 4 strategies to help you sort of reduce your food waste at home. The first one, smart shopping. So sort of buy only what you need, make a shopping list. And these are sort of really simple, easy strategies for you to use with this one. Smart storage, keep fruits and vegetables fresh and store that produce so it stays fresher longer. I'll explain a little bit more about that. Smart prep now to eat later. So preparing your food for, that will save you some time, some money if you prep and cut your fruits and vegetables early. And then smart savings. So eat what you buy. So the stuff that you purchase, so buy only what you need, and then make sure you eat that stuff that you buy. Next slide, please. A little bit more into these strategies. So take only what you can eat only what you can take, save your leftovers. I tend to purchase myself a lot of glass jars with nice sealed containers. I do have, I have one for you. So nice glass jars. I use these all the time. They have these nice sealed lids on the top for saving leftovers. So if you store your food properly, it'll last longer. I'm really big on sort of these produce savers. These are very helpful. So these items like keep my lettuce for a really long time. I probably bought this a week ago. Can see that, but it keeps your lettuce really fresh. These things are really great tools. They tell you how to use them, how to keep your fruits and vegetables in the fridge and last a little bit longer for that. So plan meals ahead. Planning meals ahead kind of helps you purchase, items that you need and not overbuy things that you're not gonna cook right away. Use what's in the fridge first. So again, purchasing what you need and then cooking that items and eating them. Uh, Freeze your uneaten food. So the freezer is your friend. I recommend using your freezer. Don't use it as that place to just sort of tuck things away. You want to keep your freezer nice and clean and neat because it can save you a lot of time and money if you can freeze certain foods at that proper time. You want to use your extra food in the recipes. So let's say you bought all this lettuce or something and you don't know what else to do with it. You can look for new recipes. Sometimes you might find where you can use that ingredient up really quickly and it'll go in a delicious meal that you can eat for a couple of days and that food hasn't gone to waste. Lastly, if there's anything you can't, if you find that you purchase too much, you want to donate and share with others if you can. A lot of times if you make a big meal, you have a lot of friends over and you have leftovers, share that with your neighbors if you can. And there's always going to be those things that you can't actually eat or consume. There's always going to be the orange peel. There's always going to be the avocado peel, the banana peel. So those things we should compost at the end.
Thanks, Howard. Hey, before we move on to the next slide, we had some great discussion points in the chat as well as the Q&A function. I'm going to read a couple of the points from Miss Ashley Bramlett. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Sorry if I didn't. Hello, this is a great topic. At my house, we try to reduce the wasting of food by either eating leftovers or reusing ingredients in other countries that we cook. For example, noodles of all types and rice can get reused in many different types of entrees and can be used if you freeze them. And so she also has other suggestions on freezing items as well, and that food waste is a big problem. Can you share ideas on how to keep produce edible longer?
Yes.
For example, I think she's mentioning particularly on strawberries are notorious for getting moldy quickly. How can you keep them edible longer?
First tip for strawberries and a lot of other berries, you want to not wash them as soon as you keep them home. A lot of fruits and vegetables, we tend to wash and rinse once we bring them home. Don't wash those until you're ready to eat them. And if you find that you're not quite ready to eat them, you're not going to eat them in the optimal amount of time. Berries, especially for strawberries, blueberries, raspberries are excellent things to freeze. You do have to freeze them. There's a special process they can't touch. You sort of lay them out on a nice baking sheet so where they're flat and then freeze them. So again, you're going to need some space in your freezer to lay them out flat and freeze them that way. So then when you put them in the bag, you can sort of use them like that. So that's the tip for berries. My other tip, which I'll talk about just a little bit later, and it's really about changing sort of the way I've sort of grocery shopped, and I think we can all sort of learned a little bit from this. I tend to buy fruits and vegetables every other day. I buy what I'm going to eat for the next few days, and then I go, and it makes for a quick trip to the grocery store. So I find myself going more often, but I only stay in a few minutes because I'm buying the fresh stuff that I need, that I'm going to cook right away, that I'm going to eat. And that way I tend to not waste that stuff. I don't buy a bunch of fruits and vegetables and say, I'm going to eat this all week. And as I mentioned, dynamic lifestyle, a happy hour or two comes up and it's done.
I can't tell you how many times my bananas have, and I promised myself I'm going to make the banana bread, but I missed that window sometimes. So I think there's some other comments too here. from Ashley that she agreed with you that, you know, I agree, it's not just by going only by the sell by date, but to go by the food texture and the smell, and agree with some of those suggestions. And I think you're going to touch on other suggestions here on the slide on how to prevent food waste. Andrew in the chat also asked, how can we share foods? I know you talked earlier about donation. How can we share foods like milk?
So I would check with the food donation organization in Alexandria is alive. Definitely check with them. The issue with milk, because storage could be an issue, keeping it cool, and a lot of places when you donate may not have that storage facility. So I would go definitely with a larger organization that may have the space to store milk. That has been a big issue for a lot of people wanting to donate the milk, and sometimes they get too much of it, and it can be, they can't keep it in the storage. So I would check with Alive if they need the milk, and always check if they have that space for it. There's a lot of organizations locally. This is called Food Rescue US is one organization. They do food running. So if there are sort of places where there's too much food or excess food, they can send someone, which they call a food runner, to pick up that excess food and bring it to places like after school programs where there are kids that are there that need that fresh food right away. So Food Rescue US, we can put that in the chat. They always look for drivers, and they're always looking for places to get stuff donated.
Thanks, Howard. I know during COVID when schools were kind of sharing milk and lunches and things like that for kids to take home. I know in my neighborhood, there were neighborhood listservs like Buy Nothing, you know, whatever neighborhood, and they were also sharing the abundance of milk that they were gathering. So I think those are some resources that I've seen personally in my local area.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Any more? We're going to move to the next slide.
We'll go back to additional questions, but if you want to hit on this slide.
Sure, because this is more about the fruits and vegetable storage guide. And I can probably send this around later. I think we have a nice one that can be printed off, but inside the fridge, we're storing apples or berries, cherries, grapes, melons, all these things you can store in the fridge. Plums, you want to store after ripening. Avocados, pears, tomatoes, you also want to store in your refrigerator after ripening. I know they always tell you don't put that avocado in the refrigerator, but once the thing starts to get a little soft and firm, if you put it in the refrigerator, it'll last a lot longer than the few days from the store.
And Howard, I feel like it always goes from like being as hard as a rock, and then it's like mushy, and then I like lost the window again.
Got my avocado here. Again, it's been in the fridge and it's still pretty firm. And I bought this, I don't know, a few days ago. I'm about to eat it. So
Nice.
yeah. So you want to keep your avocados and tomatoes. Again, tomatoes is another one of those things that you buy them, they may be kind of firm and ripe, and when they start to soften, get a little bit more ripe, and you put them in the refrigerator, they'll last a little bit longer. You want to keep bananas, mangoes, papayas, and pineapples. Store those in a nice, cool, dry place. Potatoes and onions, store those in a cool, dark place. And you do not want to store your potatoes near your bananas. So you'll see that in your food storage guide. There's a lot of fruits that you can't store near each other because especially apples sort of give off fumes that will ripen the fruit a lot faster. So don't store your apples with your bananas or your potatoes because they'll start to sprout. So some more tips, I think I just said that. So to prevent your mold on your berries, wash them just before you eat them. You don't want to wash them and then stick them in the fridge. That's going to get that time to mold faster and to soften up a lot faster. And then consider storage containers that are designed, like I just mentioned, to extend the life. So the produce savers are designed to sort of extend the life of your lettuce, leafy greens that go bad. There are some designed for berries. I do have one for that. And they come with nice little baskets, so you can sort of rinse them off and it's all neat and clean. We'll go to the next slide. So some helpful tips for storage. Storing is big, as I mentioned, we're bringing a lot of these things home and it can go to waste if you're not sure about your best by date. But if you can store it properly, you have a better chance of saving the food. And the one thing I do is I decant my items when I get home a lot of times. And people are like, I only heard about that with wine. What do you mean? So I take it from my original package or whatever I purchased it in and I put it in my glass jar. So that way I have a nice seal on it. And the good thing about this is now I know how much I have, right? I can open the cabinet and I can say, this is how much I have. And I'm not looking in sort of this box. It's really quick. And when I go to the store, I know I may need to purchase more. And I have them in all different sizes with different items in them. I also have, the what do you call these? No, I can't think of the name, but airtight jars, mason jars, large buckets to use, beeswax, that's great for your cheese. So you want to make sure you want to wrap your cheeses in that, take them out of the plastic. This will help them last a lot longer. I use mesh bags when I go shopping. So these are really great. I tend to shop package free. So when I go, I'm looking for fruits and vegetables that are already out of their package, and I put them in here. You can go to bulk stores and get grains and put them in these items there. And that typically helps me with not only just reducing waste overall, but again, I'm able to see what I've purchased. I'm able to gauge what I purchased, and I can keep it a lot fresher for a lot longer. And, invest in a label maker. You can always put your own labels on this and say, I have purchased Wednesday, or I cooked this on Tuesday, and just mark on it. Now you kind of know where your clock is since you labeled it yourself. And I think now we can probably show our video really quick about shopping package free, if that's okay with everyone, if you need some tips on that.
We're probably feeling a little stressed and a little worried about how to go package free and reduce your waste. I'm Howard Lee with the City of Alexandria Resource Recovery Division, and I'm here to show you exactly how easy it is. When you walk into a grocery store, today we're at Mom's Organic, which has a very nice bulk aisle. You'll see a lot of the items that you can buy without packaging here, from nuts to grains to pasta. You can buy anything like baking goods that are all available without packaging. All you need to do is bring a few little items, like a little mesh bag to carry them in, or a glass jar if you have, with a nice lid. I need some pasta. Fruits and vegetables come without any packaging. So they come in their own packaging. You really don't need to add them into another plastic bag when shopping. You can just place them in your cart. Very simple. Once you do get your fruits and vegetables home, it's very easy to wash them off with a little water and vinegar, and that way you'll reduce the amount of any pests that you bring in or any germs. That's all. Oh, I do need an onion. Coffee is one of the easiest things to go without packaging. You can always come to any of these stores, find your beans here, grind them up, no charge, put them in your paper bag that you can use here, and this is totally recyclable or compostable, or you can bring your own jar and fill up for coffee. I typically shop the outside aisles first. That's where you'll find your fresh fruits, meats, and vegetables. If you do need to purchase items with some type of packaging, then you have some options to choose things that are recyclable and that don't go to the trash. Glass, you can recycle glass here in Alexandria, so if you are looking to purchase items with some packaging, choose glass option. Metal is also an infinitely recyclable product. So anything in metal can be recycled over and over again. Not all bulk stores have this option, but if you can find soap and dish detergent, stain removers, dishwashing detergent, disinfectant, here in a refillable station, just refill these up with your containers and off you go. Thank you. You too.
Work, good work, creative, talented
You're probably feeling a little stressed and a little.
people, and
Thank you, Helen. You can see I like avocados.
This is awesome, Howard. And I wanted to remind people in the chat that actually, as part of last year's Earth Day, Megan and the library also hosted us for that plastic free, packaging free workshop. And that is also recorded as well. And we're happy to share that in the chat after this call. Go ahead, Howard.
Sure. I mentioned decanting, and again, I even buy like my little squeeze bottles. So this is, I think, salad dressing I take and put in here. So these are really great. Put oil in. Someone asked in the chat, how can they price the dish detergent? So what they do is you get a tare weight for, it's usually by the weight. So the little jars that they have there, they already know how much those are. They'll weigh your detergent, and that's where you'll get your price. They'll remove the weight of the container, and they'll price it that way. So that's kind of how all bulk things work. It's done by weight. So you bring your container in, and you can have them actually weigh it first, and they'll put the little sticker on there so they know to reduce that off the price. Do we have any questions? I can pause a little bit for questions here if people want to ask some. Is there any in the chat about storage?
Yeah, Nadine said tomatoes, if they'll be used in cooking, they can be frozen until ready to cook, as is until ready to cook. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think freezer, from what I've learned, is the magic, right? It just freezes time.
It stops that clock, so it was, and that's what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll move on to the next slide. And that is feed hungry people. And again, I thank you for those questions earlier in the chat about donating, because again, we can always donate food if we're not going to use that food. In the city of Alexandria, and this is from the last food sort of, I think, 2021, food insecurity increased by 34% in the city of Alexandria. So that's nearly 21,000 people that are now food insecure in just the city of Alexandria. So just think how large this region is and how many people can be food insecure. So we want to feed people, not landfills. We can build cleaner communities, and we can also create job opportunities. As I mentioned, Food Rescue US has a food runner program. So these people driving food back and forth. And as that program grows, they need more people to help with those things. So a lot of different organizations, as they grow with donating food, does create opportunities for people. So I definitely encourage getting into the food donation arena in the city. I did mention the Live is one of the big ones here. So take a look at their website for any information on how to get involved there.
Great. And Howard, I know that I think during the pandemic, some people may have, I guess, prepped and purchased a lot of canned goods. And, you know, I think this is something to think about of, you know, donating cans if it's still usable.
Yes. And again, canned goods are intended to last for a very long time. So if you have those things and you want to do some spring cleaning in your kitchen and pull those canned goods out, it's a good time to sort of donate those canned goods to people. All right. And the last thing we can do is compost. So again, I mentioned there are going to be some items that you can't donate. There is going to be some um, scraps that have to sort of go to the trash, but you don't have to put it in the trash. We can compost things, and composting is a soil amendment, and basically we can add that to our soil. It can prevent yard waste from being raked or blown into the street. You get mulch. You can use it as a soil amendment. You decrease soil erosion. It can retain water in your crops. 1 acre of amended soil with compost can sequester about 75% of a car's annual emissions. I hope I said that correctly. But if you think about how just 1 acre of amended soil and the number of cars that we have on the street to sequester all of that through composting would be really great if we all could participate a little bit more. It does suppress weed growth. And again, a lot of communities love compost because it helps them grow their food a lot better. It's just a really great soil amendment, great vegetables. And I know in North Carolina, the composters there love this stuff. There's a thing called black gold. That's what they call it there, that because they know that it can make or break crops for a lot of farmers if they have access to this material. So if you can't donate, you haven't eaten it, then compost. And the city has a couple of ways that you can compost here in Alexandria. So we now have a curbside composting program. I'll dive into that. That just started this month. So it's a 2-year curbside composting pilot for about 2,000 residents. We have the farmers market composting. That's for drop off. So you can drop off food scraps there that will get composted, or you can compost in your backyard. So a lot of people, I know myself, I also have a tumbler. So you could just put that in your scraps, put your yard waste, your leaves in that, and then you'll have your own soil amendment after a couple of months that you can add to your own garden or flower beds or your lawn in general. And we'll go to, so how's the curbside composting work? So we are offering up to 2,000 residents access to this pilot. We'll provide them 6 months of service. If residents would like to continue with the pilot, there is a fee. It's I think $21 what we've negotiated with. So monthly fee, that's a significant savings. And normally that pickup service is about $32 a month. So what you do is you go to our website. We have our page. I want to share a link there, and you can register. There will confirm that you are a refuse paying customer, and then Compost Crew will send you a link to sign up at their website. You'll put in your credit card information. They'll provide you with a startup kit, which is a 7-gallon bin where you can put your food scraps in, compostable liners, and we'll start you on a weekly curbside collection schedule. The really great thing about this program is you can put in sort of your kitchen scraps. They're taking meat and seafood. So a lot of items that we originally did not take in the drop-off can now be taken here. So some dairy can also be taken. I think those are some of the new things, and some processed food that we'll take in the curbside program.
And if I can add one more thing, Howard, as for the pilot participants, they will also be receiving a complimentary bag of compost soil amendment that they'll be able to get to apply in their own gardens at homes.
And I think we've shared a lot of information. We do have some additional resources on our website. We have a reuse directory that does list that contact information for donations. I think a lot is on that list. There is a package free map. So I've listed sort of all the stores you can attend that, have items without packaging that you can buy in bulk, which was Mom's Organic, which you saw me do in the video. But there's some other stores in the area that sort of provide that service there. And of course, our website just has tons of information. And even our What Goes Where tool is a very helpful tool. And I think we've added some food items there too that will tell you that it can go to compost, like eggshells.
Yeah, and if I could orient folks on this call, our website, which is alexandriava.gov/resource recovery. That's our landing page for all things waste diversion and such as recycling and composting activities. But we have a whole section here on reduce tips. And as Howard mentioned, we have a reuse directory that residents can access. And it's, of course, we talk about food here as ways to donate, but there's all these other places you can repair your items. You know, if it's your electronics or your instruments or your bicycles, or donating or consigning and buying secondhand, a lot of different ways that within the city you can participate to reduce, reuse, and donate to reduce your waste. So that resource is available here. Howard mentioned that we have a whole section on food waste, and again, curbside composting pilot that we just launched. That is one way to compost your food waste. Of course, the farmers market composting that has been in the city for a number of years. This is a free program that's accessible to all residents, and we just launched a new market on the West End here at the Southern Towers Farmers Market, and that's a year-round market. And so there's a ton of information that you'll be able to find on our website. And if I can orient residents to one more tool on the main page, is our sorting game. So you can play this game with really anyone. It's open to all ages, but you can play this game. Maybe you're going on a road trip and you can teach your child how to recycle right in the city, and what you should do with various items that are in the city. And, Howard, we might need to think about a curbside option now. And this is a few years dated. We have yard waste composting, we have the food waste drop off, and bulk and all these other items. And you can see the beautiful city skyline in the background. And as you do this, you get to build a fun Alexandria City Park. And at the end, I think you can, if you complete all 5 levels, you get a certificate. So it's just another fun way to learn how to recycle in the city. So those are our resources. And that said, Howard, if you want to close.
Yes, thank you. If there are any questions, I'm open for questions. Now's the time to do it. I do want to thank you all for allowing me to share this information. I think it's very important. Again, as I mentioned, with food insecurity in the region, you think this is a very prosperous region. We're in the nation's capital. There's so much here. So why are we still seeing people who are food insecure? And there's food deserts in the area. And then, so there's just that imbalance. You have food insecure people and we're wasting food. So I'm hoping to bridge the gap here in the region. That's sort of been my goal. And I hope that you've learned something this evening and we can all do a little bit better and not wasting food.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Howard. I'm sure everyone's clapping at home. There was one question that I haven't addressed yet, and I think you did cover in your slide. Can used coffee grounds be recycled? Or I guess composted?
Yes, you can compost used coffee grounds. You can actually dry those out and not put them in the compost bin. They're actually really great as a fertilizer for your plants. So just do a little bit of research on how to use coffee grounds in your yard or in plants. And you may not need to put them in the compost bin, but if you want to, definitely compost your coffee ground.
Great. And earlier, there was another question about How can we share items that spoil quickly, such as milk and orange juice? I'm wondering if maybe putting it into a different container and taking it to a neighbor would work. And she had a second question, but if you want to answer that one.
It's also helpful. Milk, one thing I would do there, again, talking about decanting, there are some glass containers that actually have better lids. Oftentimes people are not closing that gable top, and that plastic kind of gets a little moldy and funky, and that's really what you're smelling. Your milk is probably not bad. You might be just smelling the top. So decant your milk and orange juice, put them in your own glass container, which has a nice sealed lid. That'll keep it a lot fresher in the fridge. There's also some tips on how to keep things in the fridge. So maybe storing them on the fridge door and just not up on the shelves will also probably help keep them fresher and longer.
Yeah, and Nadine also shared that she freezes the milk, and I think that's also a really great way. I know I'm going to share this very embarrassing story with this group. I hope this is a safe space. But during COVID, I had a weakness moment where I thought the world might end, and I bought powdered milk, and I'm lactose. And I was like, well, maybe one day I'll, want to have cream pasta. So anyways, powdered milk is shelf stable and is another alternative. But I did end up donating that powdered milk to someone who does use it frequently. So that did not go to waste. I feel like everyone has an embarrassing food waste story to share. So that's mine. The other question that Ashley had was if you had any recommendations of books on this topic, that would be great to share.
Those websites I mentioned are actually very great places to start. The EPA does have a whole toolkit. It's food. Let's share that with you, get the exact way they pronounce it. But that will have a whole toolkit. There's even a coloring book that you can use with your kids. Food Not Wasted, I think it's how it's called. Sorry for that.
I like the idea of it being a coloring book. But Megan, being that you guys are with the Alexandria Library, maybe we can partner with you on titles that you may already have at the library for food waste.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I don't think we have anything specifically about food waste, but we have books about canning and preserving foods. We have several books about like homesteading or zero waste living that would go into detail on how to prevent some of that. Right off the top of my head, I'm thinking of one. It's called The Conscious Consumer. So just thinking about how you're purchasing food and how you're holding on to some of those items. But there's definitely maybe not one specifically on this topic, but definitely books that touch on it in various ways. And I'd be happy to, I'll send out an email later and I can include a couple of those titles with that as well.
Yeah, I love that, Megan. And that's something I always think about whenever we talk about reuse, reduce, it's not new ideas, right? Decanting and trying to preserve food and making sure that they last longer. Some of these tips and tricks I think I've learned from my grandmother who survived the Korean War. So it's just ideas that I think we can really learn from past generations and also from books. I'm sure there's a ton of like you said, the different tips and tricks. And Karen shared that she turns OJ into orange juice into popsicles. That's a really good tip.
Yeah, love the reusing, old ingredients and different things. If you have something that you can make it into something different, an ingredient, try it. Helen knows I love my little Google Assistant at home and it is on mute now, but I ask that thing all the time for a recipe with something and it'll bring up 3 recipes for me to try. So, we love to do it. There's so many recipes out there that we just need to find them and take the time to do it and fit them in our life if we can. Use those tips I shared. again, I kind of mentioned I shop a little different. So purchase your fresh items frequently, but not so much, and then use it as you go, and see how that works for you. And again, start small. I did not start with this, start with a few containers and see how you go. Maybe start to reduce, one item in the household and see how you fare with that, and then go from there. Don't throw out your kitchen.
Yeah, I love that. Reuse what you already have, right? And I love the point when we were watching the video earlier about when you're buying fruits and vegetables, you don't need to put it in a plastic bag. They're already its own pack. They already have their own packaging, like
their own skin,
oranges.
so.
Exactly. So I love that. Great. Any other questions? Let me see. And thanks, Howard, for sharing the food waste activity book, reducing food waste activity book. And Richard shared, it's important to be mindful of portion size and how much we actually need to eat. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's another tool that we can share. It's under the SaveTheFood.com's website. And they have something that I love this. They have two things. One is called the Guesstimator. So this is a tool you can use when you have a holiday party coming up. Maybe it's Thanksgiving. You can say how many people is in your dinner party, how many leftovers do you want? That's really important, right? The turkey sandwich is the next day. That's a tradition. So what kind of meal you're having, and it helps you plan your menu, and you can say, okay, I want to have turkey, I want to have broccoli, whatever, pumpkin pie, whatever it is. And you can finalize that menu, and you can say how many of them are big eaters or small eaters. And it helps you kind of tell you what portion sizes would be good for that type of dinner party. The other tool that I really like is under SaveTheFood.com. They have something called Meal Prep Mate. And this is, meal prepping helps you really think about how to shop, and not waste food. So I think these are really great tools to think about.
Definitely use their storage guide. It will save you a lot of money and time, and you will definitely not waste food. Just sort of browsing this thing. I've learned so much from it. Just sort of even just looking at it, just kind of going through different items and saying, oh, how do I keep my apples longer? Just anything like that is helpful.
Great.
Yeah, and they even have meats.
All right. Any other questions? Well, it was so wonderful having everyone here. I feel like we could talk about food waste all day, or how to prevent food waste. And Megan, if you have any last remarks.
I was just going to say, Howard and Helen, thank you both so much. I thought I knew a bit about preserving food, and I learned so much tonight. So thank you. This was a very eye-opening presentation. So I'm glad we recorded it, so we'll be able to go back and look at it again and see all of the tips that you shared. And I especially appreciate you tying in the food waste and the food scarcity as well, and how important we all can be good community members and figure out how we can make it more balanced for all. So thank you all for joining us tonight. I'll just plug an event that's coming up, not in June, since we were talking about repairs. We're going to be doing a Fix-It clinic at the Barrett branch on June 10th. So items that you have at home that may need some little care to get them working again, you're welcome to bring those to the library, and we'll have volunteers to fix items. And also, I would just also plug the City of Alexandria's Earth Day 2023 website. There's a lot more events going on this month, so check that out to see what else you can get involved in. And thank you all, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Good night.